What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Now, something interesting happened to me, and I figured I would share it with you guys. This is a true story. I was actually going to do the video that I'm about to do a few days ago, but I never got around to it. I was working on some other videos and just kind of got caught up, and I figured I would tackle it later. And then something happened today, and it was almost like an omen, and I was like, I got to do this video now. This is a sign. So, again, this is a true story. This is really what happened. For those of you guys that don't know, I did pick up an extra part-time job at Best Buy. I worked with the company a few years ago, and it's here in town. There's some extra money. Most importantly, I like the discount. The Best Buy discount is really good. And I started working there. So I'm helping a customer today. It was a nice old Cuban lady. And I get to talking to her, and I'm asking her questions. And she lets me know she's looking for a few things in the store. She wanted a thumb drive. She was looking for a portable hard drive, an iPod, or something like that, some kind of MP3 player. And we're talking, and she lets me know that she's on the way to Cuba. She's actually leaving this weekend to go to Cuba. And I was like, okay. And the more I got to talk to her, the more I discovered about Cuba as a whole. Now, I knew some things about Cuba, but just hearing it from an actual Cuban and someone who's traveled there and is Cuban, it just kind of struck a chord with me. And again, this is something that what we discussed, it made me want to share it with you guys. And it kind of leads into what I was going to do anyway in terms of the video. So to continue with the story, I'm helping the Cuban lady, and she gets to talking, and she's letting me know she needs a portable hard drive. And she lets me know all of these rules and regulations for Cuba, for visitors. One, she says if you have a laptop and you go to Cuba, they require you to deposit money at the airport when you arrive there. It's like a $400, $500 deposit. Now, you don't get this money back until you return to the airport to fly back home, and they confirm that you have the laptop. The reason being is some people smuggle things. People bring laptops from other places, fly into Cuba, and try to leave it as gifts to Cuban citizens, and that's what they discourage. She goes on to let me know in Cuba, as far as TV, you can only watch approved station, and you can't really watch anything overseas or like foreign programming. To get a job in Cuba, or actually if you have a job in Cuba, you have to get the government's permission to switch jobs. She goes on to tell me all kinds of things, the conversion for currency. She says if you bring US currency over to Cuba, you lose 20% of the value per dollar. And we're talking, and the more I talk, the more I really realize how different it is to live in Cuba. Like I said, I knew some of these things. I didn't know every single detail. They don't have internet. She says only the really extremely wealthy people, like the big wigs and I guess the ballers, have internet. Other than that, the common folk, the average person in Cuba, they don't have internet. There's a lot that you cannot do. There's a lot that you actually need permission from the government to do. And it's a whole different world out there. And it really just got me thinking. Obviously, the boxing, the fight game, has a lot of great Cuban stars who are on the rise. And it really makes you appreciate and respect what they bring to the table. Now, if you don't think a lot of the Cuban fighters have the most exciting style, that's your business. Me, as a boxing fan, I can appreciate all styles. And what I was going to talk about, which is something that is very important to me, just because, and after hearing this story, I just felt I felt compelled, like I had to do this. So that's these Cuban fighters, and some of them aren't getting respect. They're not getting respect for what they do. And when you hear about the conditions, the rules, the regulations, the restrictions, and the overall quality of life living in Cuba, and then you see these people like Edislandi Lara, people like Guillermo Rigondeaux, and you see what they obviously had to go through to defect and come over here. It makes you respect, or at least it makes me respect them a whole hell of a lot more. And it made me just really, I was really thinking deeply about how in America we take so much for granted. We complain when our internet's too slow. Most of the people over there have no internet. So again, it just kind of bugged me out, and I almost had a revelation just talking to this old Cuban lady and listening to her struggles and what she dealt with. She was also getting an MP3 player, and she was loading up with movies and music, and she's telling me basically how she has to smuggle it in different compartments because you're not allowed to bring movies and music from the States and other places. And like I said, it just blew my mind. I did want to talk about Guillermo Rigondeaux. Now, if you listen to what I just said, listen to that whole story, and put it in perspective, I mean, you got a guy who has an illustrious amateur career, a guy who, within 12 fights, he dethroned someone who was ranked at least in the top 10 pound for pound, who hadn't lost in over a decade, Nonito Donaire. And then you got the big networks like HBO. You got boxing analysts who are recognizable faces, Jim Lampley, and different people, and they don't even give these guys props. So maybe they don't know their struggle, maybe they don't care, but I just feel like there's a lot of propaganda in the sport of boxing, and you got to give it up to guys like Rigondeaux. If you really look at what he did and what he accomplished in 12 fights, I predicted that Nonito would beat Rigondeaux. I thought he would be too powerful and too big for Rigondeaux. He proved me wrong. So this is not a bandwagoner or somebody who even had faith in Rigondeaux beating Nonito Donaire. But I have enough respect for the sport to give it up. And that man has talent. He has skill. And it's just a shame to see a big network who is dabbled in boxing for the longest and is still probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, networks for boxing. Showtime is trying to catch up, and ESPN does a little bit, like Friday Night Fights, but HBO, and they don't even pay this man any mind. They don't even give him respect. His own promoter or co-promoter, or whatever you want to call it, like Top Rank, Bob Arum, they complain that he has a boring style and nobody wants to watch him, and they pretty much ostracize him. And he's for being as good as he is because he's not entertaining enough, because he doesn't fight like Brandon Rios or Margarito, or he doesn't just swing for the fences. I mean, he's almost outcasted and ostracized, which is crazy that he's just banished and like shunned from the sport of boxing. It's crazy to me. Again, within 12 fights, he's dethroning somebody who was supposed to win. Even if you look at great fighters of the past, Mike Tyson, based on him, based on his handlers, for whatever reason, he didn't get that title shot at Trevor Berbick until his like 28th fight. He had 27 journeymen and build up confidence builder fights before he got that title shot. Now, don't get me wrong, Tyson fought all those fights, I think, within a year. He fought a lot of fights, but he needed those to build up his confidence. His handlers thought that that was the best path, and when the time was right, they matched him up with Trevor Berbick, and the rest is history. So Tyson, obviously a great, you know what type of animal Tyson was in the 80s, but Tyson, being a young champion and being the youngest heavyweight champion, I believe, he still didn't even do what Rigondeaux did, which is have an amateur career, and within 12 pro fights, you beat the number one guy. I mean, that's almost virtually unheard of. And to see these companies and the Jim Lampleys not pay him any mind, basically try to brainwash the fans and tell the fans that he's not worth watching or nobody wants to watch it. Like, don't make up my mind for me. I'm the fan. And that's one thing that I hate about boxing, is just the politics. Boxing is, everyone knows boxing has always been corrupt. But how are you going to tell the fans? The fans should be telling you what they want, not you tell the fans what they want. It's your job to put on the best possible fights with the best possible opponents matched together. Don't try to brainwash us and say nobody wants to watch Rigondeaux. I want to watch Rigondeaux. I want to watch Terrence Crawford. I want to watch Mayweather. I want to watch Miguel Vasquez. I want to watch Richard Abril. I mean, I don't mind watching these guys because I like boxing. So if they have a good opponent in front of them, I want to see it. So again, with my story, it kind of hit close to home. Just talking to that customer who was from Cuba, who was visiting Cuba, just to really see what these guys go through. Rigondeaux, a fighter who's kind of late in his career, and he's not getting any level of recognition or props for what he actually did. Rigondeaux had to leave his family behind in Cuba, and they're still stuck trying to rebuild or stuck, and he probably has to smuggle money because obviously Rigondeaux's making some level of money. In Cuba, you can't have professional boxing. You can't become a professional boxer. That's why a lot of them have great amateur backgrounds. So he's over here making money and probably has to send it to him. And it's just crazy what these fighters from Cuba go through. So that's my revelation. That's my story for today. True story. Let me know what you guys think. Does Rigondeaux deserve props, or do you think he's overrated? Is he so boring that nobody wants to watch him? Let me know what you guys think. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next videos, Ego signing off.